Hello. Yes, we are here and we will slowly start. Thank you all for coming and a warm welcome to you all on International Conference Engaging Citizens Through E-Participation, Statistics, Trends and Best Practices. The conference has been prepared by Association for Culture and Education PINA in collaboration with Europe Direct Point Koper Capodistria. It is a result of a 2-year-long Project Dante, an international Leonardo da Vinci partnership project between various organizations and institutions which representatives are here today, focused on the exchange of good practices in the field of digital, social and civic competences. As a start, I would kindly invite Mrs. Monica Muresan, Project Coordinator and General Secretary of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Bistrița Năsăud, to welcome you all.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming today to our international conference. As our colleague told us, this project starts in 2013, so it's a 2-year project, and it's very important for our organizations and for all the partners involved. I'd like to thank PINA for organizing this meeting and this international conference, and Urska, she was the core leader of this meeting, and of course we enjoy to be here. We enjoy Slovenia. For me it's the first time here, and I'm very happy to see your country, your beautiful country of course, and hope to have in the future many projects with your country and different organizations. Till now our project having 7 partners, 2 from Romania, 1 from Greece, 1 from Spain, 1 from Czech Republic, and I forgot someone, and yes, 1 from Italy and 1 from Lithuania. So you see it's spread around Europe. It's important for all of our organization because all of us deal with training, with ICT instruments and with citizenship. For Romania, for Chamber of Commerce, it's important because it's a cooperation in between 2 Europe Direct centers, because our organization hosts as well an Europe Direct center. So for us, it's important to see how other organizations work with citizens. And I think the results of our project that will be posted, and you can find them free on the project website, guidelines, e-handbook, study cases, will describe more or less what we did in these 2 years. So I encourage you to use the results we produce. And of course, if you think they can be improved, a feedback from your end will be welcomed by all our organization. Thank you, and thank you again for your involvement and for your organization of this conference. Thank you.
During the next 2 hours, we will hear 4 short presentations from Slovenia, Spain and Czech Republic. First speaker comes from Slovenia, is Mr. Simon de la Corda from INEPA Institute. Mr. de la Corda is coordinator of the NGO Network for Inclusive Informational Society and a long-time researcher of the topic of e-participation. Today, he will present to you what is happening in Slovenia in the field of e-participation in relation to current European trends. Please raise your hand if you would like to ask a question during his presentation. There will be time for questions also in the end. Thank you.
Kaya, thank you very much for this very nice introduction, and I'm really happy that so many people are with us today. And I hope my presentation is going to answer as much as possible of your questions. Oh, this is Italian. This is full screen? Okay. My focus in this presentation is going to be threefold. First of all, I would like to introduce the core concept of e-participation. Since my background is in political science, my focus is going to be on the field where actually everything began when thinking about e-participation. This is the field of the government and the field of the citizens. I'm aware that you here are coming from different backgrounds, from different fields, and I hope at the end you found out that e-participation is not only related to the government or citizens' participation, but it is also somehow related also with the process of learning, the process of interacting in everyday lives, and all other processes which are now being supported by the new technologies. So, but first of all, I would like to ask you, I would like to check, how experienced are you as citizens in the area of e-participation? So I will give you 3 questions, and just raise your hand whether you already did it or not on the online. So my first question is, how many of you have already searched for government documents or downloaded official papers or public documents or draft documents online? Whether this is municipality side, whether this is government side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I would say about 25 people. And I will make a pyramid of e-participation. So around 25 people have used the basic process of e-participation, which is e-access, online access to public information. I would say e-information. So the second layer of participation is usually more interactive one. So my question is, how many of you have already signed online petition, or have provided, or have participated in online discussions, or given comments on draft proposal, or communicating with the government officials or mayors on local level, so on, being engaged online in conversation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's around 15. I would call this e-communication. Okay, and my final, the last question is, it's related to the core, I would say, idea of what democracy should be in terms of representative type of democracy. So, how many of you have already casted online vote on national or presidential elections or online referendums on the national level? Just raise your hand. Okay, 1. And I will check this answer. Okay, can you say what was the occasion?
I hope I understand the question, because I feel a little bit strange to be the only one. You were meaning voting
Yes.
for a national or a European matter?
Meaning that you are coming from the country which enables citizens to cast online vote in presidential elections, or national elections, or European elections. There is only one option. Okay. Okay, sure.
So 0.
Okay. If you would be from Estonia, you would have the option to do this online. So actually now you can see, in terms of e-participation, we can see that still majority of the e-participation is going on this basic level, access to information, access to documents, which is more or less non-interactive. And the level of communication, which is a little bit more complex, not only to establish but also to handle, is lacking behind. But the core, the idea of democracy is actually to discuss public issues, to provide comments, to be active citizens. And this is the area of e-participation which is still not developed in the form that we would expect in terms of how we often use internet and social media. So this is now we explored a little bit what is e-participation about. Also, e-participation can be accessed basically from two viewpoints. One viewpoint which is actually a kind of a core viewpoint which is being used by the governments and also by the European Union, is that e-participation is viewed as a kind of government process. Meaning the governments are providing to citizens services, tools, top-down tools, which citizens can use in order to interact with the government. And if you look at what are the key points or key words in these concepts, usually we can see that we have web, we have technology, we have services, we have administration, we have vote, going to elections, and we don't have much talking about citizens. Okay, there are some citizens' participation, but still, in this understanding, the government is in the core of the communication with citizens, not the citizens. And this concept is now being questioned by many students and also by citizens themselves. I will tell you why a little bit later. Another approach to e-participation is more citizens-based approach. I think my colleagues are going to talk later more about that, talking about also social media. And here we can see that we have different focus. We have focus on public, we have focus on civic, we have focus on engagement, openness. So not really technological, top-down understanding of e-participation, but rather more innovative, more interactive, more citizens-based spaces which are being co-created by the citizens, and where the citizens have the main role and are in the center of the process of engaging in the democracy process. In the reality, the truth is between both of them. Both concepts are having a kind of ground, and usually the latest trends are trying to combine all those approaches when creating new apps, new applications, or new e-participation processes. As I said, as my background is in political science, I still think that democracy, discussion about e-participation is discussion about how we understand democracy. For the last decades, we see that the participation on elections is going down, and there is a lot of distrust towards how the politicians and government institutions are functioning. And this is also kind of the background reason why we are talking also about e-participation, especially from those government perspectives, which are also about the idea that if we have a problem with democracy, okay, we will do some ICT technology invention and we will solve the problem with democracy. But this is not the right approach, because if you look, what is the core idea about e-participation is how we understand democracy. And this table shows you how different models of democracy are actually favoring different types of e-participation tools. We already have this pyramid over there, and you can see the main understanding of democracy is about going to elections. This is my understanding of the political elites, represented political parties, that it's most important that we make citizens to go to elections. And if you look how these models of democracy, which tools are being favored by this approach, you can see that this is access to information, online voting, also online polling for accessing public opinion. But there is not really much about interaction tools. On the other hand, you can see, for example, participatory type of democracy, which is favored by NGOs, who are more, how to say, citizens-oriented. You can see that those model democracy is having much more interactive tools, like online consultation, online petitioning, and so on. So it's very important how we understand political democracy, where is the focus, in order to design the proper tools. Usually, the current forms of modern democracies are trying to combine all those types. We have representative elections, we have plebiscitary model like direct referendums, and we have different kinds of civil dialogue when NGOs are engaged into participatory policy making. And what is current state of the art? This is the, can you see that? Okay. This is the concept, how European Commission is currently understanding e-participation in regard to the Horizon 2020 program. This is the main program of European Union in order to develop more competitive, union and so on. And you can see that e-participation is included, but it's in the focus of the so-called Open Government Initiative. So we can see that it's still a kind of government-oriented, technologically-oriented understanding of participation, which is related to the data processes and services, and that there is not much talking about the citizens again. So still, in terms, looking from the viewpoint of the institutions, the government understanding e-participation is still prevailing. Okay. These are my slides from the conceptual note of e-participation. Do you have any questions about this first part? Because now I'm going to move to the statistic and trends in Slovenia. Any questions regarding the concepts, models? Okay, thank you. Slovenia is, in terms of e-participation, is quite an interesting country. Here you can see how the Slovenia was rated from 2003 to present on the United Nations e-participation index. United Nations e-participation index is kind of index which is still developing. Its ambition is to rank on all countries on the world in terms of how they provide 3 types of online services: e-information services, online computation services, and decision-making services. And all the websites of the governments on the world are being accessed by those 3 types of services. And you can see, and there is some very interesting methodology behind that, and they calculate the index on this. And here you can see for Slovenia, currently Slovenia rank is very low. We are among, according to this rank, we are the less developed country in the world in terms of e-participation. However, we can see that we have a climax in 2010 when Slovenia was among 20 most developed e-participation countries because the Slovenian government introduced 2 tools. One is hyperclose development tool, which I will present later, and another tool is e-democracy government portal, which enables citizens to provide comments on the draft legislation proposals. However, just because they introduced those tools, the Slovenia had bigger rankings. But after those introducement, the reality was that the citizens had access to these tools, but the impact of providing comments through these tools was very low. So actually those tools didn't really impact the final outcome, how the comments and policies were made. And of course, Slovenia slowly started to lose its position. What is also important is if you look from the European Union, I'm sorry, but in this picture you cannot really see the e-participation divide between the West and the East of Europe. The darker is the greener color, the more developed are European countries according to this index in the area of e-participation. And if you look more precisely, you can see that the countries of the Western Europe and Nordic countries are more developed in relation to the countries of the Eastern and Southeast Europe. Meaning that we don't only have a democratic divide within the European Union, we also have an e-participation divide in terms of in the European Union. Meaning that e-participation is not only that a country is putting a lot of new online tools on the web, but also how these tools are really promoting citizens' participation and how is the real impact from those tools. And of course, we can also say this is a kind of question of transition because those countries have not having a historical, cultural experience with democracy in the long term like Western Europe has. Okay? But if we look Europe as a whole continent, we can see that the biggest share of top 50 countries on the world in e-participation is coming from Europe. So meaning that Europe as a continent is the most developed participation continent. Meaning that countries coming from Europe usually are more developed in relation to the other continents. This is also due to the, I would say, very strong effort by European Commission, which is financing different cross-national e-participation projects among the member states. Also Slovenia participates in part of these projects, and which are actually helping governments not only to introduce e-participation tools, but also to experience with new practices, with new citizens participation approaches. And this is a kind of political, strategical decision which other regions don't have. And that's why Europe, if you are a government in Europe, it's more likely that you're going to involve citizens through e-participation on larger scale. Okay. This is the data from Eurobarometer from 2013, which is measuring different, I think you're not seeing that because it's really a small one. This was the Eurobarometer which was researching what is the practice of participatory democracy in the European Union. And these two columns asked people in all member states how often they signed the online petition in the last 2 years. And another was how often they commented public issues online, on the online forum in the last 2 years. And you can see in Spain, the most people in Spain use it online commenting or participating in online forums. And maybe we can have a very, how to say, basic understanding of this if we look what actually happened in 2012, 2013 in Spain, when there was this huge public popular movement which rise with the issues of the financial crisis and the economic crisis. And there was a lot of civil society activities going on, very similar to Occupy movement, but I think the Spanish word is a little bit different, and I don't know at the moment what was the word. Is there anyone from Spain? What was the name of the movement in Spain, these popular movements? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. And if you're looking from Slovenia, Slovenia is very close to the average number of using online petition citizens and online forums. And in the United Kingdom, we can see that the online petitions are the most often used by citizens in relation to the other countries. Okay, this is my last slide in this section of statistics. Going back to the United Nations e-participation index, we can see from these numbers which tools are being most often used by the government. And you can see that mostly, almost half of the countries on the world is using different types of online surveys or feedback forums. Then we have discussion forums and bulletin boards, meaning that this interactive part of tools provided by the governments, it's quite popular. But on the other hand, when we're talking about online voting, we see that this is still something that the governments are trying to understand, are experimenting, and are not really putting focus on that one. But if we disregard those tools, we say, okay, let's forget about this. What is most important is whether these tools actually have impact on how a decision making is being implemented. And here we can see that the data provided by the United Nations participation index shows that there is not much evidence about how those tools are really bringing citizens in decision making and what if there is really an impact. For example, there are only 26 there's only 26% of countries governments which are committed to consider the results of the e-participation in decision making. Meaning, if I as citizens go to an online consultation provided by the government, there is a high level of option that the government is not going to consider my input in the decision-making process. Also, only more than 20% of governments provides confirmation received on citizens sent communication. Meaning, if I provide government with my suggestion, there is also a high level of chance that I'm not going to get the feedback. Thank you very much, dear Simon. We received your contribution, something to that. We are going to answer you in 1 month with the arguments whether we are going to accept your comment or not. No. And what is more, only 13% of countries' governments provides outcome on feedback received from citizens concerning the improvement of their services. So there is not much influence on the citizens how e-government services, e-participation services created top-down are being shaped to the needs of the citizens. Okay, now I'm going to move to my last section about 4 cases from Slovenian e-participation. Do you have any questions regarding the second section on statistics, trends, in terms of e-participation globally, Slovenia, European Union? Yes, please.
Slovenia was number 84 with the other 83.
Second, in terms of the United Nations e-participation index.
Like who's number 1?
Which year? Which year? In which year is your question addressing?
Well, the year that you're showing there.
Okay. The most developed countries usually are Nordic countries of the European Union. Then also very developed is Australia, and then we have also United States, Canada, all those countries who are already having a kind of practice of strong democratic values and tradition. And also South Korea is also very developed, also because the South Koreans are also kind of, they're like something like Estonians in Europe, the South Koreans are something similar in Asia. But in the latest years, also Asian countries, especially Middle East countries around the Gulf, are also getting ground on e-participations, but not because they're actually really trying to move from their kind of kingdoms and so on in the growth to really democracy, but because they're putting a lot of finance into developing e-government and e-participation services. So providing new tools, but not really working on the overall understanding how democracy is being practiced in both states. This is answering the question.
Yeah, so the figure in any case is per capita.
Yes.
It's not a global figure.
Yes, there is also some exploration of how e-participation index is related to how well is the country, and there is a positive correlation. Meaning the greater is GDP of the country, the more likely that the e-participation index is going to be higher. Okay.
You mentioned in one of your slides that Europe is participating more than, for example, America, the United States. And I wonder why, because if you think that America, with the federal states and their access to the internet and the common language and everything, why is it a lower participation? Is it because in Europe we are different countries, different languages, and the Commission is doing a lot of effort?
Yeah. Actually, it's very hard to compare European Union and United States in terms of e-participation, because United States is a kind of national country which is, how to say, more connected, and it has kind of its own institutions which are running the processes in the country. In terms of European Union, we have a sui generis political system when the national states are still kind of main players in determining how European Union is being practiced. So, if in this slide it's slightly, how to say, we have to be careful. Meaning that if only 28 countries from the both North and South Europe, North and South America is being among 50 countries, that doesn't mean that there are not countries which are very developed on their own in e-participation. Meaning that the United States is usually among 5 or 10 most developed e-participation countries. And because European Union has quite a lot of member states, and this is also the reason why Europe as such is being, how to say, is having more countries which are more developed in relation to the other continents. But going to comparing the United States and America, Europe and United States. In Europe, there is e-participation is regarded as a kind of political consensus, meaning the European Commission is providing funds to the governments and organizations, citizen organizations, academia and institutes in the area of e-participation in order to develop these tools, to use them. And this is not the case in the United States, that the government would centrally finance with millions of dollars this kind of projects. That's why the United States, how to say, the central government, the federal government has their own projects, and those states in the United States have their own, how to say, local projects. And there is no kind of grand strategy how to make United States a kind of e-participation political society like in European Union. One reason is that the European Union has much more issues with democratic deficit, meaning that the institutions of the European Union are not having so much legitimacy for citizens' recognition on the European level than the federal institutions in the United States have.
Do we have, as Europe, a set aim of percentage to reach until a certain year for e-participation?
Yeah, this is a good question. There is a lot of criticism how the money, European money spent through the 7th framework program was actually effective in terms of what are the effects of the e-participation projects. There was one study which found out that for every citizens, European citizens, that participated in the e-participation projects financed by the European Union, the cost of his participation, meaning visiting the website or casting a ballot on e-participation, on e-petition, or going to online survey, was about 500 euros. Meaning 500 euros in terms what was the budget of the e-participation project and how many citizens actually participated in this e-participation project. So, yeah, this is the problem of top-down designing e-participation in Europe, when usually academia and those who have capacity to participate in the 7th framework program, they can write very good proposals in bureaucratic terms, but they're very weak in terms of engaging citizens in grassroots manner. Because also NGOs are usually not partners in these kind of projects. And academia and the companies are not really having a true interest to engage citizens in decision making, but rather just to design new tools. Thank you. 2 minutes. Okay, very short. Sure. I only have pictures of those tools, so it's okay. The first example is I suggested the government, which was a kind of quite popular in 2010 when it was introduced, but the citizens soon find out that this tool, which enables citizens to generate comments to the government ministries, and when they publish the comment, there is about 2 weeks period of time when other users can comment the citizens' proposal and they vote on this proposal. And if the proposal gets enough votes, it is accepted and it goes to the government ministry, and the government ministry has to provide feedback on this proposal. if the feedback is positive, then the government ministry is then implementing these proposals as a part of the decision-making process. So far, more than 98% of proposals which have a lot of votes from other citizens, and they passed this first requirement, were actually, were not accepted, were not adopted by the government. So there is a huge criticism of this tool. Why the government is putting something online if only 1 or 2% of all proposals are actually being accepted. So there is a lot of frustration with this tool at the moment, and the Government Communication Office, which is running this tool, is thinking how to redesign it. And not in terms of technology, but the process around this, how to make government ministries more sensitive and more accepted to the citizens' proposal. Then is another case is government portal e-democracy, which was also kind of presented as a good case study in the United Nations e-participation index. But the reality behind is that it is fairly untransparent, meaning that I, as a citizen, if I provide a comment on the draft legislation on this portal, I cannot see the proposals from the other citizens, what other citizens are also proposing. And also, there is no feedback on the final outcome of the final document, meaning that I cannot find out whether my proposal was accepted, and if not, what was the arguments why they didn't accept my suggestion. And these two cases were top-down, clearly top-down. The third case is a kind of combination between the top-down and bottom-up. This is a project run by the group of NGOs and by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This also, it is about creating one-year public discussion about the core priorities in Slovenia in relation to the future challenges of the European Union. And this was also the first e-participation case within the foreign policy area, because usually foreign policy is not an area where citizens are asked to provide comments. Usually they're asked to go to the referendum. But here, this is kind of introducing participatory democracy in this foreign policy field. And the result was that a group NGOs and the ministry tried to combine forces and synergies in order to bring citizens into this process of defining the priorities. And they had quite a success, but unfortunately, the project was only 1 year long, and in 1 year it's very hard to really create a long-term sustainable project which would generate a public opinion in terms of what should be the positions in Slovenia in relation to the European Union. And the last case is completely grassroots project, which was created as a part of public uprising in Slovenia in 2012, as a part of similar to what happened in Spain, similar to what happened in Iceland, as a kind of a public uprising against with the issues of the economic and social crisis which break out in Europe. And this was a kind of online forum portal where the citizens could open their topics, highlighted what are the issues, and also provide solution. But this application was not really directed to the concrete government process or government ministries, so it was only working as a kind of communication space where people interact, engage, exchange opinions, and the impact on the policy was actually non-existent because there was no government as a partners on the other side. So now this application is archived, but it's a good case how something without funding, without any top-down support can create a vibrant citizens community. Also was supported by social media, Twitter, Facebook, and other tools. So, thank you very much for your questions and attention. I hope this presentation was interesting and that you're going to benefit from those content. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. So we finished a bit with a grassroots activity that was really strongly focused also on the social media, and the guys that run this platform are still one of the really most activistic young people active, especially on Facebook and Twitter, still sharing the same idea. So now we go to the second presentation that will be about social media that have become really an important part, a communication but also an action tool for citizens, if not even completely integrated part of all of our daily lives. It is important we speak about their role in the context of citizen participation, and I invite Mr. Pavel Smutny from Technical University of Ostrava that will present approaches toward using social media for participation. Thank you.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to talk a little bit about social media and citizen participation. And there are a little bit two approaches about this topic, and maybe it will be a bit a discussion which kind of approach is the correct one. So the first approach is that social media really helps activism, to be active citizen and so on, and how we can describe this type of activism and why we are using social media. So social media is very good at if you want to spread a message and information to a very large group of people. So if the message is having enough emotions and enough information and people are catched by this message, it's quite easy now using social media to spread this message around the world, around the circles of your friends and their friends and so on. So it's from the technological side of view, it's really a great tool to send this information. The second thing which is great about social media that it can provide a balanced news about the coverage against the mainstream corporate media or the propaganda. I have two examples about that. On the left side, there's a Twitter post from Kiev, from Maidan Square, where are people telling that even the Russian media were informing that there are only 2,000 people on the square. There is an actual photo of the square, and they are saying, okay, this is not true. There are more people than that. So they try to balance this information war, which is quite happening now these days. And on the right side, you can see again a Twitter post from a reporter who worked for NBC, and he started posting tweets about the situation in Gaza and from the Palestinian side of the story. And the NBC wasn't really happy about it, so they told him to stop, and people start criticizing this suggestion, and they put him back to the Gaza so he can again inform about the situation in a different way than the mainstream corporate media. Another great thing about social media is that it gives people the power to call out the injustice, and this is again a picture from what happened last year in the United States, when a lot of Afro-Americans were protesting against the police approach to this community, and they started using this hashtag Black Lives Matter. And for example, this hashtag was voted by the American Society as a word of the year. So it was for the first time that the hashtag was voted as a kind of new word which had really impact of the things which are happening these days. Again, the hashtag and the hashtag campaigns are quite powerful. And for people, it's quite easy now to follow different opinions about some topic. If the people are using the hashtag, you can start following different opinions and start getting a full picture about what people are thinking about the topic, which was really hard before the social media, because you can go to the square and maybe start asking people, but it took a lot of time about getting different opinions. Now with using social media, it's much convenient. And also the hashtag campaigns can provide a little bit like a support to other countries and other people in different countries. So again, on the left side, there's a support from Barcelona to the Ukraine and what was happening in the Ukraine in that time. Social media can also be more accessible or provide more accessible way to those who cannot leave the home, and it's not only about disabled people who are not maybe able to go to the square and give their opinion about it, but it could also be in a situation like in a war situation when it will be too dangerous to go outside to the streets and tell your opinion. So you can use social media to give again maybe the information about what's happening in your town, on your street, and so on. Social media equals power because it was demonstrated by many times that some countries are banning social media because they are afraid that probably something will happen, or this is a little bit like a proof that maybe the government like in Turkey, in China, they are not really satisfied what's happening on the social media, so they started to blocking in a technical way the social media. But for example, in Turkey, it proved that it's really a bit nonsense, because even they started blocking Twitter, they came up with a different technical solution how you can post on the Twitter, and it really gave much more attention about the topic than it used to be before they blocking the Twitter. And also a lot of TV stations and TV shows are now using social media as a channel for engaging and to give an interaction with the audience. So for example, this is a slide, or this is a picture from a Czech TV show which is called Hyde Park, and it's a 1 hour show that they have always some different guests every evening, and all the questions are coming from the people, and people can use Twitter, Facebook, web or Skype, and they can start asking the questions. So this was the first little bit approach about the social media. It's the great tool for activism, but there are some critiques, and they are said, is it really activism? Maybe it's called slacktivism. And what is slacktivism? It's a combination of people who are slackers, who are lazy, who don't want to do real things, and an activist. So they are doing something in a support of an issue or cause that requires a minimal personal effort. So this is a different approach to this topic. There are different types of slacktivism, or it could be defined by different types. So first one is it's called collectivism. So a lot of organizations these days are using social media or as a measurement of success. So they are providing information. This video was viewed 30 million times, but does it really change something? So there was against this type of activism also a campaign which was says linking isn't helping, that if you put a Facebook link or like, it will not really help to the people. So maybe we should do something else only to start linking posts on the social media. There's another type of charity which says that action in support of cause that take a little effort on the part of the individual. There was a study which proved that people who are more open about supporting some charity and organizations, they are not giving enough money. That people who are not so open about supporting some kind of organizations, they are giving more money than the people who are posting, okay, I like this charity, but that's all, that's where they end. And also, there are some critiques about charity as a byproduct of purchasing products. For example, there is a campaign, Product Red, which gives you opportunity to buy very expensive things, and they are even more expensive, and part of the income is going to support the charity. But some people say, is it really necessary to buy a product to support a charity? Maybe you can give the money strict or ready to the charity. So we have two really strong opinions. Is it slacktivism using social media, or is it activism? I think I was looking for some picture which can divide, and I found this one, and I can agree with the comment that action speaks louder than words, but just because something is less effective doesn't mean that it should not be done. So it's always best to think if the tool I'm using is the best one for this occasion, or I can do something else, do something more. So maybe using blogs, petitions, letters can start something, but it should not end. And maybe we should follow, and not forgetting that there is still tools to be activated, to go to the square, to maybe go on strikes and so on, and start using those two tools together, so it will maybe more effective. Okay. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions or comments, opinions.
What was the origin of the expression selectivism?
What's
the origin of the expression selectivism? What was it?
The term was coined by Dwight Ozert and Fred Clark in 1995. So this term is already with us from the beginnings of the internet. Maybe it wasn't in that time so important, but it's becoming more and more important these days.
Very old.
So I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Now going from this grassroots even more into something that could be combined. Porto Alegre in Brazil has developed one of the best and most known wiki cities that provides visibility for causes created by the population, promotes stronger citizenship, social commitment, and shared responsibility. Is it a trend that will become a standard feature of all the cities in our future? If yes, an important part of its successful implementations are going to be smart, user-friendly apps, systems, websites that will contribute to positive results of the Wikicities. Bot.do has developed a solution that enables citizens to send photos of city issues like bumps in the street to the city authorities. The solution will be presented by Andrej Zetic, director of Bot.do.
Also, I might find the slides. It's good that I come from a technical company, so Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. Excuse me for my Tarzan language, so you can read it if you don't understand me. So I came from a company which was founded last year, and but the services were being developed for the last 3 or 5 years. So let's go to the point. First, little bit about the technology. Everything that was developed in-house and using open platforms like Ruby on Rails, iOS, and Android. This means that we have the complete the complete authority to develop and use the service as we like. We don't pay fees to no Microsoft, no anybody, so we are completely free of any attachments from the big business. The web page is also on the cloud platform, so we don't need really some infrastructure or some special hardware to use it. Okay, the basic concept is when the citizens detect a problem, then should report the problem, then automatically the problem is sent to the authority, so the public administration. Then the problem is resolved, the citizens is notified about the problem resolution, and he can put it on the Facebook if he is satisfied with the service. So how we do it? It's really easy. Imagine that you go with your family in the park, you see that it's a broken bench, there's some trash, and what you do? You will look at the trash, say, oh, somebody should clean it, and say, oh, who I should notify. Oh, I don't know who is the responsible for the park, and after a little time you go home and forget about it. So our solution was to use the iPhone and other phones to make a picture. The iPhone automatically find the locations and choose the right authority to resolve the problem. So, oops. The next step is our system notifies the authority sends the contractor should clean the park and send back the notification, okay, I cleaned it, and I see the happy family and everything else. So, and also another important thing, the public administration could take a lot of data out of it, where these problems are located, how many are these problems, how these problems are resolved at the time, how it's resolved, and something like that. This is important for for the public administration to optimize their effort, how to clean, how to organize, and something like this. Okay, we can basically, our service can be basically looked as 3 services. One is the easy way to notify about the problem, the trash, the benches. The other easy way is how to organize the work inside the public administration, and the third one in an easy way to control the resolution, so you can choose some systematic approaches to resolve and optimize the process, how this is done. Okay, let's see how it works. So, basically you take out the phone, make a picture, choose trash, and press button send, and that's everything that the citizens must do and know about the problem. There is nothing, you don't have to I'm in Isola, I'm there, it's just 3 steps and this is done. It looks like this. You take out the phone, you see the picture, you add the tag, and you say send, and that's it. That's for the citizen part of the application. What's happened next? The public administrations get the notification of the problem, assign the problem, or forward to another department, and then resolve the problem. How it looks like? This is the notifications. You get an email with the picture, you get the exact location on the map, and you get an email with all this data. Then the worker in the public administration, oh, this is for me, I will take it and resolve it. So it opened the applications. You also get the picture, the map, and everything else, and also got these buttons in the end, in the lower end of the second picture, where he resolved the problem, deferred the problem, or assigned to another one. And that's it, also for him. So, what are the benefits? There are a lot of problems to, if you try to imagine how to notify a non-working light in a street. You call someone and say, oh, I'm here, the light is not working. And the next question is, where are you? I'm on the street. Oh, on which part of the street? Where the hell are you? It's easier on the street. Try to imagine to be in the woods and you find an illegal trash dump and say, where are you? I'm in the woods. But which part of the woods? Oh, I'm under a mountain. So this is a little bit complicated to notify the exact location of, let's say, illegal dump. The second thing, you say, there is a dump. What kind of dump? There are some things there. I don't know what they are. So it's a little more complicated to explain from the citizens to public administration what exactly is there. So the picture is more, let's say, the picture is worth more than 1,000 words. So you get the picture, you get it. And it's a little bit easier to understand from the office what the problem is about. The second thing is less needs from administration. Today, as we found out, there are a lot of use of email and copy pasting. We got this problem, so copy it, send it to another one, and then are lost. So, because everything is happening inside the web application, the notifications are not lost. It's like the football ball. Everyone once got the ball and must do something with it. And the third efficient thing about that is that we find out using in Isola they are using our application, is that the things are moving a little bit faster, because before it was, oh, I got this problem, I must notify the inspection must do the work, then send it to the Comunala, to the garbage operator to clean out. So today they are making a picture, sending the picture, click it, and it's done in, let's say, from 5 days to 2 days. In proximity, the resolution was optimized without the administration and copy pasting. So, and the third one, you got this, how to say, if you need to control or try to understand how this public administration and the solution with these problems with the public space, it's a very complex system, and it's very difficult to find all the data to optimize it, to understand what happens, where the problems are. So basically, the old way, let's say, it was done, oh, we got the list of people, we need 5 people, we've done it. So it's not very optimized system. So, because of the data, because data is in the system, you can get these locations, these critical points. It's very easy to understand. The trends are very easy to understand, and how to resolve the problems in a more systematic way. I will show you. This is exactly Isola. If you look at, we are here. And all these points are the problems that are being notified, the orange one, and the blue one that are resolved. So in any moment, the inspector of the municipality of Isola can open and see what is happening, where is happening, how much time is in, what are the trends, which problems are where. There are, if you didn't notice, there are a lot of lights not working in Isola. It's not a joke, it's really a problem. And so this is the approach. They can do trends, they can do different, let's say, this data combinations and see, and this enables them to approach with a more systematic way. So it's like we go to our public electric company and say it's not acceptable that the light don't work 3 days, you must fix it in 1 day. So that's it. And that's it, basically the benefits. As I said, there are synthetic data, statistical data, and analytical from this. You can get, you got the basic idea. So that's everything from me. it's enough, or you want to go go on? Any questions? Yes.
Can I ask what? It's okay from the citizen. I mean, it's very convenient. It's very easy. What did you experience? Any problems from the local point of view, from the administration point of view? It's like you're taking my work. What are you doing?
No, it's not that we are taking their work. It's not. Oh, now everybody will send us problems. We don't want to solve them. We don't have the people to solve them. It was not that, because we are basically like the telephone company or like the email. We didn't do any work, so we just notify people about the problems. And their biggest fear was, now everybody will send us problems and we have a lot of more work, but we don't have people, we don't have money, we don't have the resources. We find out that after the initial using and usage, because it was fun to have photos of something, they stabilized to some normal point of operations without any more resources. Even I could say that the resources were more optimally used, so they even free some resources.
So there was a period of adjustment.
Yeah, it was a period of adjustments. It was more made of some fears than some real data or some real work. Any other question? Yeah.
So when you see a problem,
Yeah.
can you then choose from different authorities?
No, you don't choose the authority. You just add a tag,
Yeah.
like a hashtag, of what is on the picture.
Okay.
So if you see trash, you,
Yeah.
let's say, they tag trash. Why is that? Because our system is not intelligent enough that that it can understand from your picture what's wrong with, what was the right problem. So you just say, not working light, bump on the street, broken bench, trash, and then it's a little bit of artificial intelligence on the backside of the server who choose the right authority.
At the back you have all the database of responsible authorities, and the
Yes.
system automatically sends.
The system
so maybe it can be a problem for the fishery inspection, and the system will be send this picture to the fishery inspection. for
Yeah,
example.
basically yes. It's not.
So that you have to have like you have to have the knowledge of who
We
is
have
responsible.
some semantic knowledge from that used from the hashtag. So if you tag light in Isola, it will say, oh, this is a light, it's Isola, the lights are part of the license for public company that use street lights, and then send it to them. You understand? It's like, it's a little bit complicated because people don't use the same word for the same thing. You say trash, you say smeti, you say different things for the same, so we have this little bit of artificial intelligence to classify the problems. So you don't need to know the authority. You just need to write what the problem is.
And the system just sends an email?
The system sends an email with the link to our servers. On our servers there is, as I saw you before, this is our service. So everything is on our service. There is no need for installation or something like that.
Is there a person?
Sorry. Please.
So each service is gonna monitor your system. It's got a person.
No.
Monitor your system.
No. As I explained before, every notification of a problem is like a ball. So the citizens take a picture, so the picture and the notifications go with the email to the inspector.
That was my actual question.
Huh?
How is it different than sending actually an email with a photo of the proper?
No, because there is every notification in the system is assigned to one person. So this person must do something on the system if he wants to move the process forward. So it's not an email. You got an email, forget about it, and nobody knows about it. But everything is on the system. What is Yeah, if I understand your question, is what's the difference between this and the email?
Yeah. Besides the fact that with this, I don't know the recipient.
The difference
The
is
system chooses the right
the
recipient.
yeah the difference is that with the email you don't have the history what was happened with the problem notification. No tracking, nothing. You just send an email to someone, he deletes the email and it's forgotten. With the system, with our system, you take a picture, send a notification, the notification is in the system and it is tracked that it was sent to specific person. So the supervisor of the specific person can look and say, you got this notification and done nothing.
This was my question. Can there be a supervisor of the system as a whole?
There is a supervisor of the system of the whole because this is mostly public, based on public spaces. So the municipality got the supervisor of everything, and there are some more detailed for some departments and something like that.
Can be used for police as well?
No.
Let's say like violence
No,
or something like
it's
that?
not. It's not meant for police. It's not meant from the. It's not meant for nothing that is vital, because we didn't grant that the system will be the response of the system will be just in time, because what we grant is that the notification will be delivered in 24 hours. But in the case of violence, 24 hours can be a little long period.
Then I have another two questions. Is it possible to upload videos or
No.
just photos?
Just photos, because we really think about that. If we let do more photos, we let to do videos, but we find out that if we allow only one photo, the people will think what in this photo should be. Because if we allow more photos, and then we have nothing. So we just have psychologically. Okay.
Then I have the second question. With a system like that, if you said that there is a possibility for the supervision, okay, my concern is, do they stash the data? For example, if 3 persons notice the same problem,
Yeah.
does a person receive 3 emails with the same content, or is there a system that if you post the same issue, the persons
Basically, it's worked like that. If the same locations, on the same location, the same type of problem in some period of time, it's treated like the same problem.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
You have this only in Isola or in other municipalities in
We
Lithuania?
you have this in Isola. From the next week, we'll have it in Koper, and we are with some talkings with other communities and municipalities in Slovenia.
Some agreement with municipality to use?
Yeah. The agreement is basically that they should react on the email received. Yeah, please.
Where do you get the money from?
We get the money from public.
I mean, is it a service? This is what I mean. Is
No,
it a
it's a
service?
it's not no secret. The money is our revenues came from the public administration, public service operators. It's like a monthly fee, but it's really low, and our analysis showed that the optimization they can get from this are more than enough to pay our services. Any questions?
Maybe a comment that I would like to have an application like this in my city, because I found out that some payment was broken, and I had to do all the things you were mentioned. So I had to find out the email, post an email, take a map, wrote it on the map, where is the payment, and the response was, we already have this problem announced 3 times. So with an application like this, it will save me a lot of time.
Okay, super. You can email me your major address and I can go talk to him. Basically, it works all around Europe, Turkey also. We tested in Turkey and it worked.
Do you think it works in big city?
It works in big city, but the big cities are a bit of tricky because big cities have big budgets, and big budgets they can have systems who are.
They have big problems. Forget about the big budget.
No. The idea is that if you want to go to New York has some sort of system in place for 15 years and pay for that system about 25 million. So big cities, big budgets, and big solutions and big money. Yes, please.
Yes, regarding the big cities, for example, Ljubljana is using similar approach, but they're relying on Google Maps, and they have thousands of issues per year solved in this regard. Also, I think this solution is a very good example of crowdsourcing of citizens. And I think that Celje municipality is already running something like this for 10 years now, although they don't have the mobile smartphone application yet, and also they don't have features. You can only write an email as a municipality. And my question would be, usually these applications are not problematic from the viewpoint of the citizens, but it is the question of how you integrate this application in the process of local municipality, meaning that they do have to have one few people to receive these applications. Do you have to train these people at municipality to run this? And what is also a budget, how much the municipality has to pay? I'm now wearing a black hat because these are usually the questions municipality is looking forward.
Okay. Let's respond to some in order. Yeah, Ljubljana has some system. The problems that are with all the proprietary systems that are put on city, on single city, is that you have one application for one problem. We have no, our application is not locked for some problems. You can notify everything. Our idea is to expand this in more areas. Let's say, I don't know, if you see an animal abuse, you can also notify us with that, but that's have nothing with the municipalities. So our system is not closed for one thing for one city, and it's open. The same application works in Koper, Ljubljana, Maribor, and everywhere else, even in Europe, if your major will find. Okay? So that's the first response. Our approach is an open approach. We have one application that solves with one application you can notify every problem. That's the difference between what's in place now. The second question was, if I correctly remember, how if you need to have some people to work with that and train with that. It's easier to use than Google Mail. And the next thing, they already have in place people who receive notifications for the problems. They are probably, I don't know, there are secretaries who leave the phones in one, it's interesting, in one municipality in Slovenia we found that the number for the notification of problems was the mobile number of the major. No joke. You got direct number with the major. So, and the third question, if I recollect, was
the price.
The price. The next question was.
Again, price.
The price is, let's say, about few hundred euros per month. Depends on the city and of the. It's not a big budget application because it's not very. Let's say it's there is not a big improvement. If you look at it from the point of view, it's really a small improvement, and you don't pay more money for a small improvement. Otherwise, if you want more money, they don't use it. Okay. Any other question?
I have one.
Yeah.
For example, if you have a problem which you cannot see actually, if you have a complaint about, let's say, a service, public service.
Yeah, I can respond it before you explain it. How do you see a not working light?
If, for example, I don't have a light, if I want to have a light in my house.
In Isola we have a lot of black photos because they take a picture of non-working light and they just do the tag light not working. But the location was there and the company...
I was thinking more about, like you said before, let's say animal abuse, or if a bad bus connection, things like this.
A bus connection would be kind of difficult to prove from the photo, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you have a system, maybe just to open just a ticket, like an issue.
It's not a ticketing system for all the issues. It's just issues with the photos. Okay, maybe the bus, you can see the empty empty bus station because you got the time, you got the location, so the bus was not there. But
maybe it would be interesting to have something like this also, not just actual problems, wrecks in the street.
maybe in the future. It's enough for us today. In 3 months we got 500 notifications in Isola, and that's quite enough for... Okay, thank you for your suggestion.
This picture, the one that shares all the problems online, so that citizens can see it in the way that, for example, Porto Alegre.
This is a very interesting question from the point of view what you get if you put all the problems online. If you put all the problems online, the citizens say, oh, our government is not working. And that is a bad idea.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
So this is just what the back office is.
It's just for the back offices, no joke.
Come on, it's not really transparent.
If you want to make, no, it's not the problem. If our society was ready to take this information and use it in a good way, it would be acceptable to put it online. But if I put in Isola all the problems, the next thing will be all the political parties, oh, they are not working, they not fixing that, they not fixing that. This is a problem about the conception of what you use the public information, not our company. We can have this debate, but...
Scientific society is actually putting all the notifications from the citizens on their website. It is called service 48 hours. So meaning that all the notifications which are created by the local people are put it online, and the municipality has to respond in the 48 hours. And then you can track in which stages is the solving of the problem. Meaning, okay, the notification is received, the notification is the process is solved, and also notification was not solved, because usually some notifications are not really in the working environment of the local municipality. So they also, the local people are learning which issues are responsible of the local municipality and which issues are maybe responsibility of the other people or other services. So we having this transparency is very good for the citizens to check the effectiveness.
As I said, if the information is used for learning, for understanding of how things work, for control about how the government is responding, it's a good thing. But in our experience, it was used in the other way. There were about 3 to 5 similar, more simplistic system put up before the elections. With just the intention to say, oh, there are a lot of problems, you didn't fix it. It's the reality. I can put everything online. I don't have this problem. Yeah, it's a good idea. So I have another, better one. Let's put the elections every year and start this cycle again.
Okay, I will
Thank you.
close the debate here because it's the time. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention.
So we have the last presentation. It's a good practice from Spain. It's about Smart Gijón, the citizens card that has since in creation in 2012 became vital for the quality life of Gijón citizens. 80% of the citizens use the ticket daily, and the success achieved is due to high level of political, executive and also technical leadership, as well as the level of involvement of the citizens themselves in the project. The good practice will be presented by Andres Garcia Gomez, Lawton School student.
Good morning. We are Andres and Julian, students from Lawton School, and we want to bring you an example about what we consider a good practice in e-participation from Spain, particularly the situation of the citizens' card in the town of Gijón. Most of you have been in our city during the second meeting of this project, but for the others, Gijón is a medium-sized city located on the north coast of Spain. And in 1999, the town hall came up with the idea to introduce a new card that gives access to the citizens to a considerable number of services. The idea at the moment seems like a fashion or a simple idea, just a smart card to integrate the diverse administrative procedures and practice and facilitate in this way the relation between the citizens and their public administration. Also, we consider that this is an effective manner to promote a sense of citizenship that is also encouraged by the treaties of and the functioning of the European Union. Please let me remind you some data about the citizens' card in the town of Gijón. Since the development of the idea more than 10 years ago in 2002 and the 2004, that was the date when this card was introduced to the citizens, more than the 40% of the inhabitants in the village use it, mainly on public transport. Now the statistic has grown, as we can see. The card is valid for 3 years and is available for just €2.50, but in fact that's the official date, because even if you go out of the deadline, you can continue using it. That's not a problem. The idea is always to provide a good range of quality service to the citizen in the town. We can see this is an example of how the card is, like a normal identification card of every nation with a photo top on the right and your personal data and the number.
There was another model in the past?
Yes, that's the new one.
Yes.
It changed according the times but the idea are these 4 points: offering a citizens quality service and create only one card for all the municipal service, because in the past you have one card for the public transport, another for going to the libraries. This is a way to create just one and improve new service and developing new ones.
One of the services that the citizens' cards offer to the citizens is the possibility to open a new possibility to access to different possibilities of culture or sports fields, like swimming pools, golf
golf clubs. There
Golf
are
clubs,
two in the city.
tennis courts, paddle courts, for example. These sport fields are situated in different parts of the city, and with the car you can access to these sports fields, and for an hour or 2 hours in the case of the swimming pool or tennis court or paddle court, for example. It's a good service to access to go exercise in this case. And on the other hand, citizens cards also offer the possibility to access to a public transport with a special fare. This fare is cheaper than the normal fare, and this type of fares are according to the age and the laboral conditions of citizens.
Yes, there are special fares for student, employment, according to the social and economical condition of the citizens, which is also a facility. But not only in transport, the car allows you to use for the stakeholders of this. They can go to the municipal libraries. There are more than 12 around the town, also with 12 telecenters where computers with Wi-Fi connection are available. But also the car is really interesting. The use that many students or other interested people use in interlibrary loans from the other libraries located in the city and owned by the state or the regional government is a useful way to exchange the information and to access to the culture. The city of Gijón is also engaged with nature and sustainable development, according to the good practice of these years. For this reason, in the last 10 years, I think the authorities have set up an effective network of bikes for renting. The bikes are distributed in 8 points strategic
parts of the
yes,
city.
in the different parts of the city, and you can use these bikes during all the time just by introduce the PIN code or your car.
You can get a bike in a specifically point of the city, and when you finish your way by bike, you have to left the bike in another point. Specifically
yes, this is also an advantage because you can go from one point to another one in the city, and you don't have to come back to leave again the BC with an intelligent system. They control where the bikes are collected. But not only that, the card also serve, for example, when you park the car, you can pay the parking fee with the car because it's possible to top it up with money and pay for some service like parkimeters in the street or also the public transport. It consents also the access to public toilets and bathrooms. For residents in the old quarter of Cima de Villa, that is the ancient part of the city, you can go there with the car because in other way the idea of the administration is to preserve that area and to avoid the excessive usage of car. An important aspect of this are the citizens' info points, where you can not only top it up your car, but also to obtain official certificates or access to a wide range of service, avoiding the queues in the classic administration desk. Is an effective and fast way to connect the official idea with the citizen. And I have to say that these info points are really easy to use it, not only available for whom that are digital natives, also for other persons you can use it, or in any way. Yes, it's easy. The card is not also available for Gijón residents, no, because that will be unfair. Also, students, visitors who came to our city have access to a wide range of alternative cards and service for their specific uses. We can see here some statistical data. The most important is the public transport, the people use it, and in the others, it's according with the necessities and of the other person. You can see the swimming pool, the bikes, the libraries, or the leisure are around the 3 or the 1%, even less. But the idea, the essential idea of this card is that of simplify formalities and to avoid unnecessary procedures to the cities and offer them a quality service in the city from many kind of service, as you can see. And we consider that this is a way to foster a sense of European citizenship and to build Europe, this new idea of cities for the citizens, not just for transport, car or motorcycles. No, you can feel citizen and you can feel proud of that. These are the most essential links. For example, let's go to see the first one. We don't know if yes. The public website of the City Council offers all the information, not only of the citizens' card, that here you can see all the complete information if you are interested, but also other official communication like the situation of the taxes, the employment, the contracts, and of course tourists and the pictures or climate dates of the city. The web site is available not only in Spanish, also in other European languages like French, Russian or Portuguese. Unfortunately not yet in Slovenian or Serbian, but that's a good thing.
Is the internet just put down?
Yes. We have also to say that Gijón has been one of the first cities in Spain that has introduced this card for the citizens, and then the model has been copied not also for other cities in Spain, because I think other countries, but in Spain there is also a network of a council integrated by many cities like Zaragoza, I think Burgos, that share the benefits of this common practice. And also the copy has been exported to France, Germany and Portugal, I think. I don't remember exactly, because as we said before, it's an effective way to enhance the idea of European citizens. If you have any question, we will be kindly to ask you. Thank you very much for your attention. Bala. Yes, please.
Do you know about the cost for the city to start creating a citizen? Because we have in Czech Republic in Prague similar card, but it costs almost 40 million euros and it's still not effective.
We don't know exactly the cost of this service, but we can say to you that the benefits are really higher than it costs. So for this reason, we consider that to put in a balance are more important the service than the price. The citizens are also more important. No, we don't know the price. And also because the price of the car is €2.50, and this car, you cannot travel free in the public transport of the city. You have to pay with special fares, but so it's not a free car.
Yes, in the automatic machine, you can pay with 50 euros or that. You got a credit in your car, and you can use the car in different services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seguridad, ¿qué no cuesta?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all for taking time, especially in this really nice weather, to attend this conference. Please, if you have any specific question, all the presenters will stay in this space, so you can talk with them directly if you have something specific you would like to ask or propose to them. Thank you, all the presenters. Thank you, the project's partners that enabled the Dante project, with special thanks to Monica as project coordinator and our co-worker Urshka that prepared the conference and organized it for you. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you.